I am Brian Mays. Follow along on our adventures chasing all kinds of game in the heartland of America. Our passions run from the North Woods rivers all the way out to the wild and wide open prairies. We are untamed, and wild is all we chase. This is the Amazing Outdoors Podcast.
Oh, that's a ski, dude. That's a moss ski.
There's one on the tree right there.
Oh, there's another one. That's a good way to start the morning. I'm gonna drink some of my beer quick.
Hey folks, Brian Mays back here for another episode. Today's guest, we have Ryan from the Upland Social podcast, a new podcast that kind of caught my eye in the last couple weeks, and had reached out to Ryan and commend him on a well-delivered and edited show, and led to him coming on my show. So I hope you enjoyed today's podcast. Before we get started, I'm not going to mention any sponsors today. It's just a kind of a quick, turn down the music a little, quick call to action. There is millions of acres out west that are potentially being put on the chopping block for sale in the United States Senate right now. Senator Mike Lee has led the charge on wanting to sell your public land. And I feel it is important that the listeners take a moment. I will get a pen and piece of paper, write this number down. It is 202-224-3121. Whether you're in Mike Lee's district or contact your senator, we just need a few voices to put pressure on Mike Lee to get this crap out of a budget bill and get back to balancing the United States budget and not sell our public land. So again, that number is 202-224-3121. Give them a holler and let them know how you feel about the sale of public lands. Let's get on with today's show. All right, folks, I got Ryan here. He's the new podcast on the block. I happened to catch my eye probably about a month ago, and gave a listen to, and I reached out, and here we are today. So Ryan with the Upland Social podcast. How's it going, man? I appreciate you coming on the show.
Hey, dude. Thanks for having me on. And doing well. And appreciate you allowing me to be on your show and to talk about the Upland Social and just the Uplands in general as well. So yeah, really glad to be here.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you making time for me so quickly and kind of on my chaotic lifestyle. So, why don't you give the listeners kind of, that 30,000 foot view really quick of who you are and who your podcast is, and we'll kind of dive into some other stuff.
Sure. Yeah. So my name is Ryan Linton. I am an upland bird hunter from Southern Indiana. And so I hunt a lot around here, and also travel a lot with my dog Creek and American Brittany. And we hunt a lot of places from October, September sometimes as well, if we do prairie grouse, all the way to the end of February with Appalachian rough grouse. And so I tell people that Indiana is not a great bird hunting destination state itself, but within a day's drive, you can be on some pretty good bird hunting in any direction. So that's kind of like our geographic location. I'm fully employed by my local church day to day, but something that I also have is just a passion for the uplands and the outdoors, and something that I've been wanting to do as of late is to kind of express that love and that passion in the outdoor space, specifically with the upland bird hunting community, more so. And so that, long story short, it led to a podcast, coming to life here about a month ago, is when I launched my first episode, and really thankful and grateful for the response that I feel like has been really good so far, and just wanting to create like another avenue out there for bird hunters to come together and to celebrate the uplands, and to elevate those spaces as well. So yeah, that's a little bit of a 30,000 foot view of me.
No, I appreciate it because, it's you're new, and, people may not have necessarily came across your stuff yet. So to give listeners a little bit of a picture there of who you are and what you're doing is really great. What, how long have you kind of been chasing bird dogs, and kind of what's your background there, and through that, kind of what inspired you to kind of start a podcast in this space?
Sure. Yeah. Well, to take you back a little bit before birds, even, I started hunting not till my adult years. So it was probably my early 20s. I'm 36 now, but I started hunting when I was probably in my early 20s, and I just went all in, man. I hunted big game, turkeys. You name it. And if it had a season on it in Indiana, I was probably chasing it at some point within the season. And went out to Colorado and hunted elk out there, archery elk. That was a tremendous experience. But through all that, there was just this draw, I don't know how else to explain it, but just this gravitational draw towards birds and dogs, and just this excitement of something flushing up out of the grass or out of the woods, and you having to hit a moving target. And so I remember years ago, I was flipping through like our Indiana hunting and fishing regulations magazine, and I came across this bird that was really, really colorful and had like every color of the rainbow on it, is how I would describe it. And I was like, pheasant. What is that thing? And I got to reading about it and learned that we had them up in northern Indiana. I was like, well, those look cool. I'd like to hunt those one day. But I started hunting quail a little bit around here, and this was long before I had a dog. And probably, I'd say 12 years ago or so, or something like that, I shot my first bobwhite quail.
Without a dog?
Without a dog, yeah. I just remember just being so enamored with just how cool these birds were, and how beautiful they were, and just the cool places that they live. And I actually remember the first time, I didn't kill a quail this day, but the first time I even laid eyes on a quail, I was hunting with my brother, and neither of us had a dog. And I remember one single quail flushed up and just kind of went up. It kind of like fluttered and just sat back down, and I could see it just sitting out in the open, because I guess it just wasn't super spooked by our presence. And I hollered at my brother. I said, "Hey, there's a quail up here." And he's like, "How did you even know what that was?" I was like, "I don't know. I just knew it was one." And then just a few seconds later, like a massive covey of like 25 birds got up, and most of them flew across the road, like where we couldn't hunt. But he ended up killing one. I didn't kill any that day, but so I'd had some exposure to upland birds. And
so real quick, I want you to keep on with your story, but I gotta ask, I've hunted rough grouse without a dog, but just like picking a field and going for a walk with two guys with a shotgun, like I've never done that for quail. It just seems like such a tough task. I guess, you work plum thickets and things like that, or, look for that structure, but man, like I got to commend you for just like, we're going to go out here and beat some brush. We're going to be the dogs.
Yeah, just going for it. And to be fair, we were hunting rabbits with the occasional surprise and delight of a covey of quail flushing.
Right on.
We were not like quail hunting, I would say. So it was just kind of like a fur and feather kind of mixed bag pursuit. But yeah, so that was, so I'd been exposed to quail here and there, over the years. I remember to tell you about, you said chasing dogs, and specifically the type of dog that I wanted. I remember I had a pastor friend of mine that invited me up to Iowa back in this would have been 2015. So about 10 years ago now. And he was just so gracious to me, and invited me to stay in his home and go hunt with him. And he had 2 American Brittanies. And I just loved like the demeanor of them, and just how, the way that I describe Brittany's is that they're like kind behind the eyes. They're just a very gentle, they're a warm dog that just they love their owners. like a lot of bird dog breeds do, but they're such affectionate dogs. But don't let that kindness fool you either, because they can be absolute monsters in the field. And so I loved that about Brittany's, and I got to be exposed to that when I was hunting with him out on the Iowa prairie. And I just remember this really cool incident. I don't know if it was the last day that I hunted with him. It might have been the second to last day, but we'd hunted all day. We'd shot a few birds. His older dog was really tired. And I'm sure that he was probably tired too. And he's like, "Hey, I'm just going to take Lady back to the truck. You feel free just to hunt with Coco, the other dog, the younger dog." I was like, "All right." So I'm going to at least finish this field out, while they're taking a break. And I'll never forget, man. So they're making their way back to the vehicle. It's just me and Coco going along, and then she just freezes and goes on point. And so I stop and I'm just looking at her, and I'm just kind of taking all this in, because this is still like not super familiar territory to me. I just knew that I was really interested in this whole world. And so I'm looking at Coco, and then, which is, this is very unusual with prairie grass. I know you know this in Wisconsin too, is that it was like over my head almost, this grass was, but I could still see like underneath of it, there was like an understory that was quite open underneath. I don't know what grass type this was, but this is kind of an unusual situation. And I look down there and I can see that hen pheasant laying there and the dog's pointing at it. And it was just this really cool, powerful moment for me where it was this kind of triangle between me and the dog and the bird. And I just loved that. And so bird takes off, obviously don't shoot or anything, but just a really cool moment that just kind of sealed the deal more for me, even of like, man, I love doing this. I know I love doing this. I love these dogs specifically, and the way that they hunt and just how they are as companions. And so if I ever get a dog, I want it to be a dog like this. I want it to be a Brittany, an American Brittany. And so, yeah, so that was kind of my origin story too, with even like the type of dog that I chose. And so 5 years later, COVID happens, right? 2020. And I don't know what happened, man. I know a lot of people got puppies. There was a lot of COVID puppies, right? Where people took dogs home during COVID.
Oh yeah.
We did not. So we actually got our dog in 2021, but it seemed around that kind of later half of 2020 or somewhere in there, we kind of came to that point where we're like, okay, I think it's time for a dog, because my wife and I, we're both pretty busy people, just day in and day out, and we just knew that when we brought a dog home, we wanted to be able to give it the life that we thought that it deserved. So we kind of like held off on getting a dog, right away. And so yeah, but something happened where there was just like a switch that happened in my wife, where she's like, "Hey, I think I feel comfortable with this," not that it was all in her decision, but we've just been in conversation and trying to, in conversation about it, and just trying to make sure that we're both on the same page with it. But as soon as she like kind of gave the green light, man, I was like, let's go, we're getting a dog, let's do this. And so 2021, man, we brought Creek home, and we've, as best as we can, we've just been getting after it ever since. And so we've hunted 9 states so far, and I'd like to get to about 15 or so, before her career is done. And it's been a blast, man. It's been an absolute blast.
Yeah, I've got a dog like that myself. She's rounding 10 now. I kind of had a similar story where, timing just wasn't right, and the stars aligned, and I knew I wanted a hunting dog, and had been around hunting dogs quite a bit in my life, and I got the first one, and I've been addicted to the stuff ever since.
Yep. Right.
So much so that like I don't even, I got out one day with my bow last year and one day with my rifle, for deer hunting. Like,
yep.
I just don't do anything else. And I ran all the turkeys off my property this spring doing spring training. So it's kind of like,
Hey, it's for good reason, right? It's for good reason.
Yeah, exactly. So I guess it kind of leads us up to today, like that you've kind of had a similar journey, I think, to a lot of us who are, maybe in our 30s and 40s, where, you get to a point in life where you have a lot of interests and a lot of things you're doing and a lot of things are cool, but you have to kind of narrow down and focus. There's only so much of you to go around. And then once you commit into the bird dog thing, it's like, well, I got a bird dog. Like my dad doesn't understand why I don't come to Florida all the time to visit him, and go fishing. It's like, well, I have 4 bird dogs. Like I don't, it costs more to board those dogs with somebody than it does, for one day than, it costs me to drive down there. Like, come on now. Like,
right.
So it's really, truly a commitment. And, but, today, you're kind of new on the podcasting scene. Today's podcast scene is crazy. I've kind of came in at the, beginning of everybody having a podcast and I felt that pressure, over the last couple of years as my life has gotten a little bit more hectic and went through a move and a build and all this other stuff. And, so it's been hard to kind of stick with it, and having the ability to listen to about a bunch of other podcasts. It's like, well, how do you stand out in the crowd? And I commend you for A, starting a podcast, and B, having a well-produced podcast. But what pushed you down that line? Like, why did you decide to take on a project like that? Because it is a project.
Absolutely, yeah. It definitely is a project, and there is a count the cost, committal, if that's even a word, a committed side of it, that if you want to do it and do it well, and not that, like, by any means am I saying that I'm competing with the real big heavy hitters out there or anything like that, but if you want to bring a degree of excellence to all this, which I think that you and I both do, to this based off of our conversations we've had, off air. Man, it takes time, and it takes commitment, and it takes some diligence and discipline to make margin for that in your week, to not only record it, but then like to post it in post, to do the editing, and to give people like a product that you think that they would want to listen to and consume. So I agree with you on that. The origin of it, it's a really cool story, man. So I kind of introed into it, or kind of nodded to it a little bit at the beginning, saying that I'm employed by my local church, and my faith and just the way that I live my life is like, my faith is a very important piece of it. And so I try to walk as best as I can every day with like an open hand and heart and mind of like what I feel like God's leading me to do. And so even with this stuff in the upland space and what I feel like it's given me, I've heard an author, when they talk about like when they feel really close to God, they call that like a thin place. So it's like a place where you feel like the space between you and God is very thin. And for me, and I think a lot of people can agree with this sentiment, is that the uplands and just the outdoor space in general is one of those really big places for me, to walk a prairie at sunset, or to be in that third week of October in the North Woods. And as I've heard somebody say, that the woods are like fruity pebbles. I mean, it's just they're just ablaze with the aspens and the maples, and it's just like this just overwhelming beauty that you're in. Man, I can really like feel like the Creator's hand in all that. And so because of that,
definitely vibing with what you're throwing down. Like, yeah, it's there's a design behind things. And,
sure.
And there's thought and intent with the way things were created, and you definitely feel it and see it in the outdoors, period.
Yeah.
If you're willing to look for it, you will find it.
Yep. It's that's a great word, intent. And I think the intention is for us to see the Creator and to respond to Him, with these things. And so because of that, I also want to turn around and help people see that as well. And so that's kind of like the posture, if you will, that I have with all this. And so I was trying to like kind of sense like, okay, well, I want to help people that also connect to God in this way, and just their hearts and their minds are just open to His influence in their life through this. I want to help people kind of see that and nurture it, and respond to it. So, long story short, so I go to Pheasant Fest in Kansas City this year. It's the closest it's been to my home, in Indiana, since I've known about Pheasant Fest at least. And so my wife and I, we get out there Thursday. The event opens up on Friday, and there is so they're actually the Hoxie Native Seeds. I don't know if you've heard of Hoxie Native Seeds or not, but they are a sponsor of the Flush podcast, I know, and what they do is they grow, they harvest prairie seed. So they run what's called a prairie farm, where it's just like native prairie plants, and so they grow and harvest that seed, and they clean it up, and they package it and distribute it to people like all across the country to help restore native prairie, like in their backyards or just on their plots or whatever they have. And so but to backtrack a little bit, I was on my way to Iowa last November for a pheasant hunt, was listening to the Flush. Travis Frank from the Flush, he had Kent and Nicholas, who are co-hosts of the Prairie Farm podcast, on his podcast. And so I migrated over to their podcast because I was like, man, these guys are fun. They're informative. I really like them. And then, I've just been, listening to them, somewhat like ever since then. And so come March with Pheasant Fest, I was like, man, I want to make sure to meet these guys. I know they're going to have a booth here. They're strong believers, and they just, and like that, like I said, they're just so informative about prairie and landscape and kind of how humans just relate to the earth overall. But not only that, they're really fun. They just have a really good like banter back and forth on this, so it makes it very entertaining. So I was just like, I just want to meet these guys. That's so. I give them my card because I've been doing outdoor riding as well, and just told them like, hey man, if you ever get down to the bottom of the barrel trying to find a guest for your podcast, I'm here. I have done a few podcasts. It's not like I'm like maybe the best guest ever or anything like that, but I don't know. I just kind of floated myself out there. Well, Kent, one of the co-hosts, he reached out to me. He has his own podcast as well called The First Gen Hunter. And he said, hey, man, I'd love to have you on as a guest on my personal podcast. And I was like, well, absolutely, man, let's do this. And so like 3 days later, we recorded the episode. And it was a great conversation. And at the end of it, after we got done recording, he said, hey, man, like I'm trying to build this podcast network. I've got several other guys with me. I feel like we have like deer and turkey and like big game. We have all that stuff covered, but I don't feel like we have an upland bird guy. And I kind of feel like you might be the guy. So I was like, okay, well, let me think about this. Let me pray about it. And, week turns around and I ended up saying yes, because I just felt like this was like, it wasn't an opportunity I was looking for, but it just kind of felt like something that just kind of was like handed to me. And so I feel like, going back to God and everything, I feel like it was a door that had opened that I should walk through. And so, so far, man, it's been great. It's been a pretty, so I lead the music for my church week in and week out. That's part of my job. So the editing and recording, kind of EQing voices and all that, I kind of have a baseline knowledge of that stuff. So that kind of helped with the learning curve and everything. And then just, man, people have just been so awesome. Like when I reach out and ask, like most of them are just like, yeah, let's do it. Like I'd love to, like, anytime I can talk about birds and dogs and upland hunting spaces and that kind of stuff, like I'm down, so like you being a great example. And so, so yeah, man, it's that's one marker too, I think, of the upland bird hunt community is just generosity and kindness overall. So it's not something I can say in some of the other circles I've ran in as far as, it just is more welcoming. I should just put it that way, not to belittle any other kind of subgenre of hunting, but just seems like people, for the most part, man, they just want to help. They just want to be kind and invite people into these spaces that have meant so much to them and have changed their lives. And I just want to do the same thing with it too, man.
Yeah, it is something special. I've kind of, to back to the community, it is, there's a couple pillars of why I think it's a lot different. I think you can find some of those same welcoming circles in other spaces, but I inherently, I think it's just built into the upland community. I think solely too, like you look at big game hunting, or whitetail hunting, you're not typically sitting in a tree stand with your buddy talking, going, "Hey, look at that," and "Hey, look at that."
Right.
At the end of the day, for the most part, like you're harvesting one animal, where in the uplands, if you got a connection with a dog, which, there's other game you can chase with dogs. And I think there's a little community behind that, but there's such a plethora of birds that could be chased across the country, which brings together this community of people who inherently want to share a field with you. If you want to kind of break it down into the brass tacks of at least my feeling on it. And that's why I've always felt so welcomed inside the community. It's like, hey man, I could definitely throw a dog down and go have some fun with you,
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Right.
So I think that's kind of built into the community, which is special. I think it's very special and unique to, the bird hunting community.
Yeah. You make a good point too. Like I've never really thought about this till just now, but it's like, there is like this different pace at which bird hunters operate, because people that are like really just not pleasant people, they typically don't necessarily like dump a lot of like affection into a dog the way that bird hunters do. And so I feel like bird hunters are just, it's a great example of the fact that you even own a dog and want to keep it in the house and sleep in the bed with it. At least that's what we do. That just lends itself to a certain personality type that's like, that just, I don't know. It just, because I don't know how affectionate you are with your dog. We are highly with our dog, and I don't know. I just feel like it attracts a certain personality type, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And that's not to sound like we're like any better than any other hunting community. I'm not saying that by any means, but there's just like, even when we're in the field, there's just kind of like a meandering patience of like, hey, look at that. That's cool. Isn't it? Like, whoa, look at that flower, or look at that tree, or, man, that was crazy. What that raccoon just did, or whatever, you name it. Right. There's just like a meandering way that we go about things, and we're not out to shoot limits, especially with rough grouse hunting. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, so there's just and it lends itself just to conversation and just kind of like going along and talking, and then the dog goes on point, and then it's like this brief moment of kind of like insanity, and then it just kind of goes back to just meandering again, and I don't know, there's just something a little bit of a different pace even to it too, than some of the other pursuits.
Yeah, and I think it, some of it comes down to, I mean, we're out there because we have dogs and we want to, experience, that shared experience with the dog of harvesting a bird. And the nice thing about, going out bird hunting for an afternoon still in a lot of places in this country is that you're hopefully you're going to replicate that experience more than once. And when you go out deer hunting or something, you shoot deer, the whole game shifts. Now it's freaking prep the meat so it doesn't spoil.
Right.
And so it's just I think it's is there a little bit more of a community of guys that hang out at maybe the local tavern, or a guy's, post frame building at the end of the night during deer hunting? And is there more camaraderie there? I think it's kind of tit for tat, but I think it does attract people who want to have a community a little bit more as their true personality maybe, or whatever. In the uplands, I just find it more welcoming. It's not as, hey, you can hunt with us, but you can't sit in my tree stand. Like, I know guys
Right.
that'll like take you to their favorite field. Like, it's just it's a little bit more welcoming to people. And I think
Sure.
it's a great place to kind of enter the world as a hunter, as a new hunter. It's a commitment by getting the dog, but at the end of the day, I think that there's a little bit more opportunity out there for somebody new to hunting in bird hunting than there is. Deer hunting's a big commitment, and there isn't necessarily that, somebody out there holding your hand, sitting in your tree stand while you try to figure it out, where you can kind of do that in the uplands and teach somebody a little bit more. So, but anyways, I kind of digress with the rabbit hole about that. But, Yeah, it's cool. I'm glad you started. I'm glad that faith is a big part of, your, at least your background and how you present yourself. And hopefully that drives through with your podcast because, it's important. And if you can help kind of bring that into your community, it's awesome to be able to touch lives that way.
Yeah. Well, thanks, man. I appreciate that.
So let's dive into a little bit, what, we kind of talked a little bit, about, we kind of beat up the podcast a little bit. Maybe I'll come back to maybe a question to wrap up a little bit more about the podcast. But out of the years hunting with now your dog, like what's a few moments? Let's talk a little hunting. Like you said, 9 states with the dog, with your pup. You want to go 15. So where have the uplands what kind of dirt roads have you kicked so far with the pup? Like what stands out, man?
Yeah. So our 9 states that we've hunted would be Montana, North Dakota. I took her there when she was 8 months old. Closer to home, we've hunted Michigan, Ohio, Kentucky, Indiana, Missouri, Iowa, and Kansas. I think that's 9. Man, they all hold special memories for me when I look back over the years and some of the cool things we've got to do. Michigan's really cool to me just because it feels that was Creek's first wild bird contact ever and it was a ruffed grouse. And I could spend a whole podcast just talking about that bird and like what they mean to me, but so we can, and I know you're a grouse woodcock guy, so we can definitely veer there if you want to, but yeah, I mean, one thing that really stands out to me is actually hunting in my home state here. So I pulled up to a spot. This was actually a private spot. My 99% of what I hunt is public, but this was a private spot that I had some access to. And I'd found birds there, and talking about quail, I'd found quail there before, but when I got there and got Creek out to the spot behind the residency, all the habitat was basically just mowed down. So I pulled up Onyx and I looked over to the neighbor's house and I saw about, I don't know, that they owned about 150 acres. And I saw some stuff over there that looked like it could be conducive habitat. And I thought, well, there's a slight chance that they've moved over there at least. It's worth a look at least. And I don't think at this point I'd ever even knocked on a door and asked for permission, just cold like that. But yeah, he answered the door and he's like, yeah, man, go for it. Like, just watch my dog and, and just kind of use your brain, so I was still even stunned that like I got permission on this place, but I was like, all right, let's go. And, so we bumbled along through there and probably about an hour into that place, we found them and it was really cool. So we got the cubby broke up, and I was hunting singles and, a bird, it just kind of flushed wild on us and I took a shot at it and I didn't see it. Like it looked like it was unscathed completely, like did not get even, one pellet. And so I was like, well, let's go follow up on it, see if we can get it up again. Because I don't know if you've hunted bobwhite quail or just any.
Oh yeah.
Okay. But you can definitely have some reflushes just like you can on rough grouse in some parts of the country. And so we're going along and I notice that Creek's not really with me anymore. And at this point, she's probably 10 months old now, maybe 9 months old. And so I'm like, man, where's she at? And I look over and I can see her just stopped underneath this small tree. And I look, where she's sniffing at, and she found that dead bird. It must have just been shot like in such a spot where it still had some life in it, and then it just coasted and just died. But it was dead as a doornail. But I was just like, man, this is so cool. Like I would never have found this, and my 9-month-old puppy just had this like genetic response basically to this scent cone and found this bird for me. So I was pumped about that. Just a few moments later, she actually pointed a bird and I was able to shoot that over her. So that was her first like pointed and shot bird. And so I was just fist pumping, to the sky at this point. And then the next day she pointed a rooster. We had a hunt up in northern Indiana, and she pointed a wild rooster, and we were able to get that bird on the ground too. And so that was just so 2 quail and 1 pheasant. Doesn't sound like much, but in Indiana, that's a really, really good weekend. And so that was a really cool memory. I'm trying to think of some more recent stuff. Man, just there was a really cool just textbook moment this last season up in Michigan. I'm just kind of just having random thoughts go through my head. But
no, let's talk about roughies, man. I mean,
yeah,
you said it's an important bird to you, and it's a very important bird to me. Sometimes it's my favorite bird, sometimes it's not. I mean, that's my love. You know, at some point when you love something so much, like there's times that you still get mad at it, you know?
Right. Yeah.
And you appreciate other things as well. You know?
Yep.
Being able to swing a gun on a covey of quail, man, I really appreciate and love that too. But there is a special place in my heart for rough grouse. And to believe it or not, I've actually never hunted Michigan. It's hard to leave Wisconsin when you're in Wisconsin, and I've hunted Minnesota plenty, so we're the lower part of Michigan or up the UP you hunt, or
I've done both.
Okay.
I actually, so if I can backtrack again before I got creeked, this thought just popped in my head. But so 2020 actually, we took a trip to the UP, just my wife and I. And so we were up there the third week of October. And I was just like, I don't know, I'm going to take my gun and just see if I can if I flush a grouse, like I'll think that's cool, you know? And so we hopped off. We actually, Michigan has those, what's called GEM sites, little grouse enhancement management sites. And so I was like, well, this seems like a good starting point since I don't really know anything about this bird. But that kind of like pessimist in my head, it's like, well, these are probably labeled this, but there's, I don't know if there's going to be like, a plethora of grouse here, on this, even though it's on the name. But man, we got out. I was like, let's just walk this for a second. My license, I bought a 3-day license. It wasn't active until the next day. And this was like 5 p.m. at night. And man, we hadn't walked just a few, not even 200 yards, and a grouse runs across the logging trail. And I was like, Lacey, that's a grouse. And so I walk up there, it flushes, and then another one takes off, and then another one takes off. And I was like, well, I'm going to come back here tomorrow. I know that. And so I'm trying to think, I think maybe we even flushed another one on that walk that evening, but I was like, cool. I saw one. I'm happy. Cause I'd never even seen one before. And so that was really cool to me. And I just remember even the sound of it's just this low guttural frequency that's unlike in it. Yeah, exactly. It's like, it's almost like your heart's kind of beating out of your chest a little bit whenever one takes off. And so I remember even just hearing that and just thinking, man, that's a cool sound. That doesn't really sound like any other bird that, we hunt. And so, actually, so I flushed, I went out that next day, man, like 2.5 hours. I flushed probably 15 to 20 grouse just on my own. I mean, this place was just, I was like, have people even hunted here? And this is supposed to be like the best time to hunt these birds right now. And I've not even seen another hunter, and I'm in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. And it just, I don't know, it kind of blew my mind. I mean, I was thankful for it, but I had the place to myself. But and kind of a sad story. So this was actually my birthday. This was October 20th. And I had just kind of like a little cheap semi-automatic gun. It actually broke on me, and I didn't have a backup gun. And so my hunt was even cut short. Like I literally only got out like one time and hunted.
Oh man.
But I was like, man, I got some shots at birds. Like I got to see them. I got to kind of be like in their world for a little bit. And so it was still just really cool and got me like just turned on to the whole thing. But I have learned since then, always bring a backup gun. So, but yeah, so that was
even
2020.
if it's not pretty, bring it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've always got an extra one with me just in case. But yeah, and then so let's go back to this previous season. So that was the Upper Peninsula. We go to the Lower Peninsula quite a bit too, and you can still have some, which I'm sure you've heard this before too, but you can still have some pretty quality grouse hunting. in pockets in the lower peninsula. And I was pretty impressed with bird numbers. It wasn't like hot and heavy like my upper peninsula experiences have been, where like, if you go 10 to 15 minutes without flushing a bird, it's kind of odd in the upper peninsula. And then, but like down here, I shouldn't say down here, but down in the northern lower peninsula from where I'm at, I don't know, I'd say probably 2 or 3 birds an hour was what I kind of averaged this last season, which was right on par with what I was hoping for. So I was like really pleased with that. And so we, my wife went with me again this season. And so I would like just take off and like go hunt for a few hours in the morning and come back to the Airbnb. And I found this spot on the map, and I was like, well, that looks good. It's kind of somewhat remote for the northern lower peninsula. And there's potential that nobody's hunted it. So we get back in there. Creek's hot, a few times where I can tell she's tracking something. And we are on our way back to the vehicle, man. We had flushed one grouse. I just barely caught just like the faintest like glimpse of it. And I mean, I can almost see the vehicle, and I look over, I'm going along the trail, and she's kind of just working through the cover, probably 20, 30 yards on the inside. And I look over and she's just like locked, frozen. And I even like look and see, I'm like, okay, I bet the bird's like right in this stuff. So I get up there real fast and try to kind of cast out in front of her. Bird gets up out of like a tangly mess. I send 2 shots, not really certain that I even hit it. So I just dropped my hat, kind of at the last place that I thought like, okay, like I know I kind of shot in this direction. I'm going to put my hat right here. You've probably done that before too.
Oh yeah.
And so we're looking.
I got customers that do it all the time. Don't move.
Yep.
Don't move. Just stay there. Let me get to where I think the bird went down.
Right. Absolutely. And so
we need a line.
We need a line. Yeah. And so I dropped my hat. I'm letting her just kind of work things out. You don't, kind of a side note, if you do that, you just kind of want to just let the dog just kind of like work it out for a little bit. Don't
that's a huge mistake
I
see a lot of people do is like, I mean, and I've been totally guilty of it, but I kind of try to get, to about where I thought a bird went down, and I stop. I don't move, and I let the dog work. And because you don't want to put a bunch of scent down. You don't want to, like I've got a dog who he doesn't have a super hard drive to find dead birds. And if I walk off of a scent like that, she'll think, oh, yep, next bird, let's go.
Yeah.
It's like, then you got to bring the dog back. And it's a lot easier to let the dog work. And it's kind of counterintuitive what you want to think. I mean, it's one thing if the bird went down and you see it on the ground, but it's a whole nother thing if you think you might have, hit the bird.
Yeah.
Anyways.
For sure. Yeah.
I digress.
Yeah. So same here. But anyway, so we're doing that, and Creek's just working right in front of me a little bit, and then all of a sudden she just stops again, and I'm like, so then immediately my spirits are lifted because I'm like, okay, she's got this somewhere, I bet. And then it like just kind of flutters right in front of me, so I'm just like screaming and hooting and hollering, like echoing through the woods because it just was all textbook, the way that it all happened. So I was really proud of that just her performance on that and that bird. And roughs are they are a tough bird to bring down, man. And I got like really lucky this season where I was able to like pretty much every day I went out, I was able to at least bring one bird home. And so I was like super thankful for that. And one more thing, we'll switch to pheasants just for a split second. So one in Indiana, we have something called game bird habitat areas. And so what these are drawn places that you can hunt on if your name is drawn. It's like a lottery system. You don't pay for it or anything. They're wild birds. But your odds of getting drawn, because hundreds of people put in for this on an online portal system, your odds are about 8% of getting drawn. So it's very unlikely that you will get drawn. But if you do, they can be some really quality hunts where I've seen 25 to 40 birds, even on like a small parcel. And so I've done several of those and been fortunate to be invited on some too, with other people. but I wanted to go like to a wildlife management area in northern Indiana, like a public place, and find a pheasant on public land that like anyone in the country can go find. Like that was like one of my goals, like, for this year, just like the next few years, to be able to like put one in the bag, or at least to find one. If I could shoot it, all the better. So to my surprise, I actually did that the second day of pheasant season this year. And I was like really pumped about that. But what was really cool to me is I was actually able to do that a second time. So this was December 13th of this year. Our pheasant season goes out December 15th. It's a pretty short season. It's only about 45 days long. So I went to a place where I'd found birds before. And we'd hunted hard all day. We'd flushed a couple hens. Rooster finally gets up. This is like the last hour of daylight. So this is like the golden hour where birds are kind of moving around a little bit more, going to roost. And so the bird gets up. I shoot twice, I think. And it was on that second shot where I put like a marginal shot on it. And pheasants, man, they are like tough, hardy birds. They're just like a small turkey, basically, when it comes to toughness. And so it hits the ground. And I'm like, oh no, we got to get over there like right now. So I'm like, Creek, come here, hunt dead bird. And so we searched probably for like 10 minutes in this like spot where I knew the bird had like gone down. And so finally I was just like, well, I don't know. Let's just kind of keep moving along in this direction. There's a decent chance it went this way. So let's just hunt along. Maybe we'll like pick it back up. I don't know. But I felt like the right thing to do is just to kind of move on, just to see maybe like what would happen. So we're going along, probably 2-3 minutes have gone by. And I'm like, I noticed that Creek's not with me anymore. And I'm like, where is she at? What is she doing? And I see like kind of where she is on the GPS. And so I go over to her and like on the inside, like my optimism is maybe kind of coming up a little bit, where I'm like, well, maybe she's on this thing. So I get over there and I'm like, Creek. And then I hear, like the pheasant, like tangoing with Creek, like where she's trying to catch it. So this bird had like buried itself somewhere over there. So then I'm like yelling at Creek. I'm like, get it, Creek, get it. And so we're going around and she's like, she takes off running again. So I figured the bird had took off running from that spot then. So I'm chasing after Creek. And so then she stops and she's like facing me, but she's on point again. So then I'm like, okay, this bird's like between us, I guess. And I take like one step and that rooster takes off running again. And so now, if you would have had this from a drone shot, this would have been hilarious, because it was the pheasant, my dog, and myself, kind of like on this train almost, like going through the grass. And so I'm yelling after her. I'm like, come on, Creek, just get it. And I'm trying to debate, like, if I get an open, because I mean, it was not hit super well at all. And I'm like, if I get an open shot where the dog's like not in proximity, like, do I shoot again? Because I really want to make sure to like recover this bird. But finally she caught up to it and caught it, and I was able to grab it. And so then I'm just like, this was like, I've already accomplished this once this season. I've accomplished it now a second time, but this was like so cool how all this played out. And not that you ever want to make a bad shot on a bird, but when your dog like really saves the day, it imprints that memory so much more for you, of like, man, like you really saved my skin just now because of just how your genetics and just your awesome instincts. And I'm just so thankful for you, and so it was just such a cool thing. A big old bird, big long tail. It was just awesome. It was just such a cool memory. And I was just so proud to be able to like take it in my home state. That's not really known for pheasant hunting either.
No, that's right on. I mean, that's those special moments, man. Especially with the dogs, I've got many of them. We could probably make a whole podcast out of them, but it's inspiring, and it's something that it's hard to forget. It's imprinted,
right,
like you said. And those are the things we get with dogs. Unfortunately, they're not going to live forever, but hopefully that memory does.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. That's the thing. You make a good point too, where it's like, you need to make sure to savor those things. And even if you're not like a great photographer, I'm not, take some pictures. And just like, I really like, I think this is why I like hunting alone a lot too. I do like hunting with people, but I really like to not feel like after, I don't know how this is for you. I'd be curious to know, but like after like I harvest a bird, I just kind of like to sit for a little bit with like the moment and just, especially something like that where it's like, man, this moment's just not like over for me just yet. Like, yes, the animals, I've got the animal in my possession now. Um, but like a lot just happened just now, and it's a moment I don't want to soon forget. And I always try to I take it's actually just um, like a boot lace kind of thing, like, an extra shoestring, but I'll tie that, I'll hang the bird like on a tree or a fence post or something like that. And just really savor it. And especially that pheasant that evening, like the sun was setting, it was like a beautiful evening, and just the prairie grass and how it was hitting all that. There was a little bit of snow on the ground. And yeah, so I really like to just kind of take, I don't know, 5-ish minutes and just like savor that, because that's what you remember, man. And those like special memories is when that dog's gone. Those are going to be the things you look back on with fondness and cherish. You know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely. It's one of the reasons like I do enjoy guiding so much because, when I harvest a bird and I'm with like somebody else, I tend to kind of put it in the bag and move on because, they're hunting too. And, at the end of the walk, we might take, pictures, but I find that I don't take as many pictures when I hunt with somebody else. What I appreciate about guiding is, a lot of my customers are very appreciative to harvest a bird. And so they want to, they're paying me to make that experience. So, and I'm not harvesting it. So I don't feel that pressure to put it in the bag to appease somebody else. And it creates this kind of moment where, yeah, we do get to celebrate and sit down and appreciate, that experience. When I go by myself, man, like I went to New Mexico for a couple weeks this year, and I got a ton of pictures that I took of me and the dogs and I shouldn't say me, but the birds and the dogs, me taking pictures of the birds and the dogs, taking pictures of dogs on point. It's one of those things that I don't do a lot with customers because, I'm not there to take a picture of a dog on point. I'm there to, help customer out. But when I go out by myself, yeah, man, I'm snapping pictures because I want to remember those things. And it's surprising. Like the pictures are I have a lot of things that happen during October with customers coming in and out, running multiple dogs, keeping them healthy, dealing with all the, financial aspects of moving money and keeping things going when you got checks coming in and going, I can't make it to the bank, there's a balance there, especially come mid-October where it's like, okay, I need some cash flow and I only got a few customers paying me cash, a lot of checks flying, it's like, I can't go to the bank today. So, yeah. But anyways, like there's a lot of things going on, and it's the pictures, you're sitting down afterwards digesting. And, I had a bird this year that I just posted on Instagram that I remember the point sequence, the track, the point and track and point and track, and the bird come off, and I'm watching the customer, and I was kind of behind him a little bit so I could see him swing his gun and the angle and the bird angle. Like, you just remember these crazy details. Mm-hmm. But I wouldn't remember all of that if I didn't have that picture of him holding out that freaking Magnum tail fan, from this. Yeah.
Was that that big, pretty red-faced bird?
Yeah, it was a big, pretty drummer. Yeah. We had snuck in behind him, and I got proved wrong. Like, there was a ridge line, with young aspen and then tag elder edge. And he came up, we found his log. He must've been there in the morning. And like, we pushed that bird probably 80 yards through 2 points. And the dog did this big loop up, and I'm like, man, that bird's probably down to your left, and we're at a hill on our right, and he come around, and that dog must have just got on the other side of him and pinched, and that bird didn't tolerate it, but it came off high off this ridge heading into the tag elder swamp, and it's just a beautiful right to left shot, and like just, amazing dog work up until, it got on the other side of the scent from the dog. Or the dog went on the other side of the scent from the bird. He went on this big 60-yard loop, and he kind of lost scent and the bird kind of went right. Can't really fault the dog at that point. I mean, at the end of the day, he did flush the bird towards us, and he did get us in that opportunity in the first place. So,
Right.
but it was just kind of beautiful dog work from at least getting us there. And I mean, that happens, you know. Again, you can't fault a grouse dog for putting you in an opportunity. So,
100%.
yeah, it's they're wily birds, and just to kind of have that memory based off that picture, I think that tail fan went, you know, close to 14 inches.
Yeah.
Just a magnum grouse.
Yeah.
And big male drummer, and you just don't see, you know, the majority of the grouse we probably harvest are young of the year birds, and that's a good thing. You know, that's having young birds to harvest is a fantastic thing. But usually those are the dumb ones, and the first ones to kind of go, and the smart ones live. So when you can outsmart an old drummer like that who's been there and probably slipped a few hunters and dogs before, it's always a prize at the end of the day.
100%. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, so you mentioned 15 states. You got any plans for the fall?
I do. Who doesn't, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'm good. So, not that it's a new state for me, but I think I'm going to try to get out to Kansas again this year and hunt the Flint Hills for prairie chickens. Just a beautiful landscape out there. There's portions of that have actually never even been plowed before, and never seen the till, and so it's just this really cool place that I can get to within a handful of hours, and to try to connect with a kind of this ancient bird of the plains, you know, that has just had such a wild history of just how abundant they were, and how they're not now. And so I've only ever held one in my hands, but they are just such a tremendous, cool.
Did you get to eat it?
Icon. Yeah, I did. Yeah. It was a bird that I shot.
Fantastic table fairy.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Before that, I heard that they were basically like shoe leather or whatever.
Oh,
and
man.
It's all in how you cook it, right?
It is.
But I thought it was fantastic, and so which I like those red birds. Like if you cook them kind of medium rare, and I like a little like steak sauce, like a little A1 steak sauce or whatever with them.
Oh yeah.
You know, a little salt and pepper. That's all it needs, I think. And you've got quite a meal there, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So I think
I do enjoy, you know, sharp tail. And I've had more sharp tail than prairie chicken. I've only been blessed with a few prairie chicken in my life. And it isn't an iconic prairie bird.
Yeah.
I've actually wanted to make that early season prairie chicken hunt down in Kansas a few times, and it's just in an odd spot for me, to kind of bail out and, you know, make the 9-10 hour drive. It's always on my radar every year because I have a place I can stay. I know where I can go hunt prairie chickens, you know,
right.
But it's usually the commitment there, right as grouse season's kind of around the corner.
Yeah.
That Montana, you know, opener at September 1st is a lot easier for me. You know, I'll go run bird dogs early in the morning and lay around and go sightseeing the rest of the day.
Sure.
And it's productive because I'm getting bird contacts for my dogs. But
absolutely,
at some point in September, the switch hits where it's like, okay, grouse season's right here. I got to conserve my dogs.
Yep. So, you got to prep.
Yeah. That Kansas one is. Yeah, and I'd like to go down and hunt the sandhills for chickens as well.
Same.
It's not something I've done. Chickens. I owe chickens a little bit of early season love one of these days because I've been hunting. You know, sharptails and huns are just so hard not to go hunt when you can. You know, at least out in Montana and North Dakota, you can find areas where they're abundant.
Absolutely.
And at least in a good year. And it's really hard to go hunt chickens. It's well, I don't know. September 1st comes and it's like, oh man, the hunting budget changes very quickly.
Yep.
So
I know what you mean.
So you want to go to Kansas hunt some chickens?
Kansas, I'd say
the Flint Hills are an amazing place as well. Like you said, they are
a beautiful place. I'd say a new place that I've got a couple states that I'm thinking about. So, I had my kind of my pheasant quest this last year that I was able to fortunately fulfill that pretty quickly in my home state. Um, I really want to be able to harvest at least one Appalachian ruffed grouse. And so I've got a few connections. I've got a connection in West Virginia. I've got another one in North Carolina. Um, I've gone and personally hunted them myself in Kentucky, and I've got a friend in Kentucky that I've hunted before with in the past. But so I've moved a few birds in Kentucky. They, not that bird numbers are great anywhere in Appalachia necessarily, especially in the Southeast. But there are some states that have, I think, higher probability than others. And so, yeah, that's one thing that I will probably do this year and take a few days, at least in the season, and try to do that. It may take me even 3 to 5 years to do that. Like, I'm fully prepared for that, just because of the low bird densities and just the extreme places that they live. It may take longer than that. It may take 10 years. I don't know. I may never do it, but that's just something that I really want to be able to do. And yeah, so like this last year, I was actually able to pull the trigger on a bird in Kentucky. Didn't get it. But I still felt like that was a little bit of me getting closer to to the end goal, And so, and they're just such a precious bird, man. They're just such a cool, like, to hunt some of these birds that it's possible they've never even seen a human, And I was talking to somebody on a couple episodes ago of my podcast about Chucker, and he hunts out in Idaho, and everybody calls him the red-legged devil. And I said, well, if we have a devil bird of the East, it would definitely be the Appalachian ruff, And so, so I'd say, like, if anything that's kind of unique, or a new place that would be somewhere out in Appalachia, it's going to be a new place for me.
I'll tell you, I get a fair amount of inquests every year from folks down in that part of the country, and I'd say 50% of them are older guys who used to hunt ruffs and, have 20 count days down in, Appalachia, West Virginia, North Carolina, or I should say Virginia, North Carolina, Kentucky, Tennessee. And I've had a few of them come up and hunt with me, and man, A, do they earn it? B, are they so appreciative of it? It down there, it's a tough feat. I know a guy who, shout out to Chase out in North Carolina. He hunts them hard, and man, he's just happy to pull the trigger. But I mean, when he gets one, it's a real feat. I mean, it's an accomplishment. He's like, man, I go walk for 3 hours, maybe move 2-3 birds. And so, like, he came up hunted with me for a week last year. And he shot 3 birds every day. He was happy. He was like, man, a spot where I can go throw my line in for some muskies down on the river. I'm like, yeah, right. Let's go fuck off. Let some dogs out, go try to catch a muskie. It's like, whatever, man. It's your day, But yeah, it was kind of cool to see the appreciation for the bird, and knowing that, full well we could keep going and shoot 5 of them. He was just kind of like, man, I can't do this at home, and this is just amazing. Like, there's no reason to beat them up. We got tomorrow. Yeah.
And you want to talk about some tough hunters, man.
Yeah.
Like,
dude.
they
Guys
are
willing to work and earn it, dude.
Yeah. I mean, it's because you just have to be, because it just requires a certain amount of, I've only done it a few times, and I'm not saying I'm one of those people, but just to be to walk kind of 45 degrees, where you got to just walk sideways all the time, and as I've heard it described before, that every direction's up. And not only that, but you're also shooting in early successional habitat, just like you are up in the Northwoods. So it's such a congested shooting situation a lot of times. I mean, man, it just calls for a certain mental backbone that, man, those hunters have down there. And there's just a lot of respect that I have for some of those, like, just
Big
kind of
time.
older seasoned Appalachian grouse hunters,
Oh yeah, when they come up here, man, like I know I'm going to take them into a spot and we're going to kill birds. Like
Right.
they're like shooting on flat ground. Oh, this is easy. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, they've all been great shots, and great customers, and I enjoy hunting a lot with them because I don't know. I think somebody who lives up here, and I'm guilty of it all the time. Like I can walk out my back door, and within 5 to 30 minutes, I can flush more grouse than a lot of those guys see. I can do it in one day more than a lot of those guys see in a season. And so I'm very blessed, and sometimes we forget about those things. So when they come up, it's always just an awesome reminder that the special place that kind of the Northwoods is, and really, what high quality rough grouse habitat does for a game bird like the rough grouse.
100%, man. No, absolutely.
So anything you want to kind of leave the listeners with, or upcoming things with the podcast?
Yeah, I mean, I'm releasing every Wednesday a new episode. And anybody that's listened so far, man, I just want to say thanks. Very humbled and appreciative that you take some time and listen to the Upland Social. I think if I could leave anything with with this conversation is just somebody was asking me not too long ago, like what do you hope to accomplish, or like what's kind of like going to be the driving force behind the podcast, or just this is kind of like your North Star. And I couldn't really answer that in that moment, but I think I can now. So back in the day, like, I don't know if you've ever heard of like ice cream socials or not. It's kind of this kind of more traditional thing, like back in the day.
I remember when they were with it. I mean, as kids, there was one there. They'd fill up freaking an ease trough.
Yeah.
A whole freaking gutter full of ice cream. And it was like, just belly up for a couple bucks. Here you go.
Heck yeah, man.
You want.
I'm in. But so like schools and churches especially would put on these ice cream socials back in the day that they would advertise as good, clean fun. And so I was like, man, that's pretty cool. Like I like that. Just, I mean, it's not like I stole that tagline or anything like that, but I hope to accomplish, like with my show, like one, good, clean fun, as a lot of our bird hunting podcasts already are. But two, like just kind of like with the ice cream social concept, like how people would gather and they'd scoop their ice cream or whatever, and then they would express their love for ice cream with like all the different toppings that they would put on the ice cream. I kind of want the Upland Social to be just like a round table, or almost picture like those rooms where they're just like high top tables where everybody's kind of like circulating and visiting with each other. And I kind of want it to be like, so like, what do you love about the Uplands? And what do you, kind of like the ice cream thing, like what's the way that you express your love for these places? And so at the end of the day, I think it's to elevate the Upland space and the people that call it home. But also, like my tagline, if I have one, at least, like what I have been saying is that together we explore, conserve, and celebrate wild places. And especially in all the kind of sensitive things that we've been dealing with in the last, several months now, with like the public land sell off and all that kind of stuff. It's like, man, we need to band together, be a social community that comes together and joins forces to help conserve these places that we've explored. But now we need to like help and fight to conserve them so that we can continue to explore them and celebrate them with people and with people that have yet to experience them, and so that's kind of like my hopes is to do this with this podcast. So whether a person's a bird hunter or not, like they can still find value maybe in at least something that's a conversation piece on an episode or whatever. And obviously, yes, it's going to be mostly bird hunters that listen to it still at the end of the day. But yeah, man, just to elevate the space. And so that's my hopes. That's my aim. And just to make connections with people too. And just such as yourself, man. And, you said you listened to an episode and you reached out, and, we've struck up at least over, some phone calls, like this beginning of a friendship. And, And now I'm on your podcast, and it's just, so there's just like a lot of these intangibles too, like where you're just kind of, joining arms with these other people, like in the upland space that, you may only see once or twice a year, whether it's going for a guided hunt with you or going to Pheasant Fest or whatever, but it's still to maintain a sense of togetherness and, as we band together and, just elevate wild places, man.
Yeah. The untangibles, dude, like people have heard Todd Freeman. He's been on my podcast twice now, I think. And I think the first time we tried to record a podcast, it was like, I cracked a bottle of whiskey. He did too, probably not being a, great podcast episode, but it was a great conversation between two guys drinking whiskey for like 2 hours, and the recording didn't work. And then the second time we had problems with the internet. And finally, the third time I said, all right, Todd, if we're going to do this, we're going to do this in person. I'm going to be in Kansas in early December. He said, you're more than welcome. I'm going to Airbnb. You'll have a warm place to stay, place to take a shower, feed your dogs, like come on out. And we spent 2 days hunting, recorded a podcast, and have been like brothers from another mother ever since.
Yeah.
And like, to me, just doing the podcast alone, the value that I got out of the podcast, it has returned in tenfold with just one friendship, let alone the other people I've met, and hopefully, truly, hopefully, have inspired a few people maybe to kick out a few dollars for conservation or something like that, And at the end of the day, it's just there's a lot of untangibles with podcasting, and I don't really do any legitimate sponsoring or anything like that because, again, it's the intangibles for me are valuable enough to kind of sit down and produce a show, and you just never know who you're going to meet, and these conversations lead to a lot of cool things, hopefully for not just you and I, but listeners as well.
100%. Yeah. Ton of nuance and, a lot of cool, what my wife and I to call, is a lot of surprises and delights, that happen, just like, man, that would have never happened if it hadn't been for, name it. So, this is a great, these podcasts are a great example of that.
Right on. I agree. To kind of wrap things up for today, I guess, kind of leave it at this. Where can people find your podcast, and kind of give that, shameless last plug, and we'll head her off for the day.
You bet, man. So it's going to be all the main ones, Spotify, Apple Podcast. You can find it on YouTube. There are other, like, I know there's like a podcast app. I didn't even know it existed until I found out that my mother-in-law listens to it on there. And so some of those other kind of smaller ones like Castbox and stuff like that. So pretty much anywhere, man, like where if a person's going to consume a podcast, like you can find it on there. I'm also on Instagram at just the Upland Social, same name. You can follow along there too. And I'll like kind of preview guests each week, so you can see who's coming for each Wednesday. And then, I'll also try to like, hopefully provide some thoughts around conservation and stuff like that. I try to add that element into it as well, where it's because I never want to feel like just a salesman or something like that, so I'm trying to like balance all that well and do that well and really like I said, just elevate the space. And so that's where people can find me. And like I said, on Instagram, Facebook, all the socials, it's going to be just the Upland Social, and then all the main podcasting platforms as well. You're going to be able to tune in and find me there as well.
Right on, man. Well, it's been a pleasure having you on the show, and we'll be in touch, and kind of hopefully maybe we'll touch back here in the future and have you on again. It's been appreciative. I'm appreciative of allowing me and the listeners to get to know you, man.
Yeah, well, thanks, Brian. I really appreciate it too, man. It was a great conversation.
All right, folks, our public lands are truly under threat at this point. There is a huge call to action. If you have listened to the podcast this long, take this number down. Get a pen and piece of paper and call 202-224-3121. Let your senator, let any senator in the United States Congress know that you do not support the sale of public lands. These are wild places. This is one of the things that makes the United States of America so rich and so unique, is that any one of us, anywhere in the country, can get in a vehicle, drive out west, and buy a license, hunt birds, and go just about anywhere. And I'll tell you right now, there are places in New Mexico and Arizona that I have personally hunted with my dogs that are on that chopping block. So if you love public places and wild spaces out west, you better make that phone call today. That number again is 202-224-3121. I'm out of here.
There's a woodcock.
Mm-hmm.